All right, podcasting time. Glenn Power is here from Powerworks Garage, which means we are talking. That sounded terrible, didn't it?
Well,
Glenn Power is here from Powerworks Garage,
yes,
which means we're talking cars. And, I'm going to leave that first part in anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. You have to pay for the premium service to have that edited out.
Yes, exactly. Pay for the premium. No shortage of things to speak about. We were talking just before we clicked the play button here, the record button, about the VW ID4s. Someone's got one right around the corner from my house.
Nice looking car,
it's
actually.
Beautiful looking. It's got a little bit of red accenting on it. I was suitably impressed. He's got it plugged into some big box. I don't know. I was looking to see if it was a VW branded. It's not, but it's very nice looking. Very, very slick.
Yeah, they're you see more and more. I saw an ID Cross on the road, and I'm sure this will be the first place we'll see an ID Buzz when the Buzz is done.
Can't wait.
Why is the price of these things so high though?
I don't know. I don't get it. It's premium.
Like the launch of the ID Buzz, and I think they were talking about them being around 70,000. What?
Yeah.
70,000?
Yeah.
They're obviously not going after the same people they were going after when they. This is supposed to be based on the Transporter, on the original camper van.
Yeah. No.
That was clearly not the.
No. These are not giveaway prices. These are aspirational prices.
Yeah. I'm not really happy with it, but they'll sell and they'll sell out and there'll be waiting lists and there'll be absolutely no doubt that it'll be a massive seller for them, the bus one, but they should definitely consider retrofitting electrification to the current Transporter model, though. I think that they probably won't do that, though, because then they wouldn't sell the new one, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting one. Right off the bat, let's talk oil changes. And you know that I'm fairly good at getting my oils changed, usually before it needs to be done. But so I had the yellow Jeep and I couldn't, no sticker. I don't know what happened to the sticker. Can't remember when the last time I had the oil change. So I took it in, just, went around the corner, went into the guy and, put it up on the pit. The guy starts taking out and I'm pretty hands-on. So when they say go sit in the air conditioning, I always get nervous. It's like, I'll hang out with you. Don't worry.
No chance.
Yeah.
I'll pass you the spanner.
Literally, I was. And he crawls underneath and he's taking a look and he goes, come and take a look at this. And it's like, oh no. And he goes, there's some silicone around your drain. I'm going, who? I mean, I usually hang out with these guys. When did someone have the opportunity to put some silicone around the drain? I mean, I'm literally going, he's going, it might have a leak. And I'm going, I don't think it does. So anyway, he does all the work, and I'm taking a look at the drainage bolt, and I notice, and this actually I want to talk to you about this, because I noticed there is a little bit of a washer in there. Yeah. Do they sell bags of those things? Because
So when you do an oil service, you should change the washer and invariably the plug.
Right.
So the drain plug is usually of a softer material than the sump, so that the plug will wear out.
Right.
It's easier to replace a plug.
Okay.
So you change the oil, you should change the plug and the washer. So if you go to a petrol station, they don't necessarily do that, and they put them back in, and then sometimes when they know they should, but they can't. So for example, a Wrangler might be one of the ones that they might, if they're going to keep some in, they'll keep in, because they're quite a common vehicle. But when they know they should and they can't, they'll sometimes just put silicone there and fix it. Now, we get them in where there's literally no plug left.
Right.
To the naked eye, because they've completely built an extra extension like a conservatory on a house out of silicone over the plug, and it's just a bubble. So you can press it because there's oil in it.
Yeah. So we took, I said, this isn't good. So we got it off, took it all off, took the thing out. The plug still looks good. It does need a washer. I mean, it has a washer there. And I just wondered, can I buy a bag of those somewhere? Like, where do I get? I need to get a bag of those washers.
The hardware, building material shops. I mean, you've got the big branded ones, but avoid those.
Okay. But they have the right little size that.
Yeah. If you can get aluminium crush washers, so the ones that are sort of like donuts, they're great, because then you can really squash those down.
So I need to get a
copper, ideally.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a copper one on there. I need to get a bag of these and just have them sitting around. So I got to get the right size that I need to go hunt down off you and just put them in the glove box.
Yeah.
But and probably just need to get a new whatever
engine.
New engine. No, this engine's running pretty good. So we took this thing off. He did the oil change, looking at it, the filter's coming out. I'm under there taking a look at as he's doing the filter too, making sure it's legit. I'm looking at the box. Not that I would know the box looks legit, but, and he, does the whole thing, puts it all back in. And then I'm nervous, right? Because why was there silicone around it? Like, he's going, doesn't seem to be leaking. So I'm thinking whoever did this when I wasn't looking, because they obviously didn't have a silicone gun there where this is like an Emirat station, right?
Just be a tube and just put it on your finger. I mean,
so the guy probably did that. Just we're going to make sure there's no leaks.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, nice, but don't do that. But okay, it's like all right.
Yeah, like I say, we see it quite often. I mean, it could. I think if it isn't leaking and wasn't leaking, then it's probably just one of those just in case.
And that's what I thought.
It's
just
not
in case.
as bad as when people put Teflon tape, PTFE tape.
Oh, well, that's the thing. Then I see a roll of that Teflon tape down there, and I'm going, don't put that on.
Yeah. So that's a real problem when people do that.
Yeah, don't do that. And he didn't, but clearly someone there does.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like to be underneath.
We get oil pickups all the time that are blocked with strands of it.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously very thin.
Yeah.
It twists, and especially when your hands are dirty and sweaty.
Yeah.
And you can't quite get it smooth, and then it tears and shreds and rips, and then it just blocks the oil pickup inside.
So beware that.
Yeah.
So it was nice getting the oil change though, Phil. And the telltale signs that maybe your oil, I would turn it on and enough oil in there wasn't, but it was just had a little bit of a knock right at the very start. It's like, oh, something's not right here. And I think the oil was just old. And that's actually the thing. I think the mileage wasn't an issue. It was old oil.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to do the math in my head. I was saying, okay, I've had it in for you guys to look at, but I don't think you did an oil change because it didn't need it. And then I was thinking, but when did I have it in for you guys to look at? I'm going, I think I need to bring my car in for a service because the mileage isn't up for a service.
But the time.
But it's over 18 months. And I was looking at when the last oil change was, and there's not the mileage on it, but clearly this oil, and that was the telltale sign is I'd start it, and just for a second there was a little knock, like click, and then it was gone. Change the oil, it's gone.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this oil was just old. It had lost viscosity or something.
Yeah, definitely. It just gets full of carbon.
Yeah.
And it loses a lot of its oiliness, which is not the best word, but it's a real description, and it does lose the viscosity. And I've sent you the aftermath of engines where they've been run like this for the longer periods of time, and it's not a pretty sight.
No. So that got all sorted, and it was painless as always. An oil change doesn't hurt. Always good to get an oil change.
As long as it's the right oil.
That's it. Make sure it's the right oil. Make sure they're doing the right job, but get your oil changed.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw the notes, and you'd put something in there about engine smoke.
Oh man, I've seen a lot of engine smoke in the last week and a half. That's why I put that in.
Yeah, I thought to myself, James must have been behind something that was like trying to kill him.
Yeah,
like some sort of James Bond Q gadget.
I've been behind 2 cars this week. One of them was a FJ Cruiser. Now, early model. It wasn't a newer one, and I only say that because it just looked a little bit like it had been driven hard. And I'm thinking it was a standard transmission, but maybe not. And there was every time it would do sort of an accelerate or gear back, there was quite a bit of white smoke coming out of the tailpipe. And I was kind of going, oh,
that ain't nice.
That's not good.
Yeah. There's, so with smoke, there's always the color test. Yeah. Then there's sometimes the odor, and then if you're absolute lunatic like the guy that taught me when I was a kid, there's the taste test.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So smoke now. So usually people would assess the color of the smoke, and they would say a bluish tinge would be engine oil. Yeah. It's burning engine oil. If it's very black and sooty, then it's overfueling. If it's very white and almost like steam from a cooling tower of a power plant, then it's coolant. Not so much these days. On a diesel, you'll get black smoke if there's too much fuel that's not being burned properly, combusted properly. On a petrol, because of the way the catalytic converter filters out a lot of the stuff, and the way engines run now, that they're not that polluting in terms of soot, carbon, the smoke on an overfueled engine will come out white as well.
Ah, okay.
So you don't tend to get that on a petrol engine of a more modern car of the last 15, 20 years. So if an injector sticks open, you'll get white smoke. Now, the FJ Cruiser, at no point are we going to say that it's the most modern, fantastic engine in there. It's a well-proven and very reliable one, but it isn't the most modern. But it does have a catalytic converter. It does have fuel injection. And it's electronically controlled by an engine computer. So it could be that there was a fueling issue.
Okay.
In terms of over-fueling. But you would like to think that it isn't coolant, because at that point, to start burning coolant, it's internal engine. And it doesn't take long to get to the point where you haven't got any left and you're overheating. So I would think that there's more likelihood there of it being fuel than coolant. But if it's coolant, they'll know about it very, very soon. The driver will be in paying an invoice somewhere.
I sometimes wonder if people aren't paying enough attention to the coolant issues, checking their oil periodically, because if it's coolant, you're probably getting some in the oil. You're going to notice it. And obviously, if you're getting a little smoke, like who doesn't look out of their rearview mirror? You're going to see it every now and then. It's like, whoa, what's going on? You
just asked the question, who doesn't check their mirrors? Was that rhetorical? You know where we are, right? Yes. So, we used to get people in saying my lights have got a loose connection because there's an orange one flashing on the side. So, look, we when it comes to oil and water mixing, we've talked about oil colours before. We've seen, I've sent you videos of oil and water mix. And
you haven't sent me any of those in a while. I was thinking people are getting more vigilant with their oil.
I just thought you'd be bored. It's just tiresome, and it's just fed up of fixing them, to be honest. But you got oil and water mix can mix oil to water or water to oil. Invariably, it only goes one way. It doesn't often do both ways, but if it's transmission, it can do both ways. Now, when oil's going into the water, that's normally not from the engine. Very difficult for oil to go from the engine internally to the oil, to the water in the engine, to the coolant. We're talking about coolant. When it's water into the oil, that's more likely to be internal fault in the engine.
Okay.
So if you imagine an engine, you've got the cylinder block and you've got the cylinder head.
Right.
Or heads if you've got a V. Now, when you fill it with coolant, you literally fill it with coolant. The only place there's a gap is the expansion tank. But oil drains into the bottom of the engine, into the sump. So if you look at the engine as just an A4 sheet of paper, the whole A4 sheet of paper has contact with coolant, but the oil rests in the bottom. So when you turn the engine off, it's just resting in the bottom. The engine runs, it turns, the pump turns and pulls the oil around the engine, but the oil cycles and then drops. The coolant cycles but stays where it is. So when the engine's turned off, there's still pressure in the coolant system because the coolant is a lot. Well, it's everywhere and it's still under pressure because it's hot.
Yeah.
The oil's hot, but it isn't under pressure and it drops to the bottom. The head gasket and the internal, which is the weaker point of the construction of the engine, is where the mixture would usually happen unless there's a crack in the water jacket, which is terminal for the engine at that point.
That's it. Your engine's done.
Yeah. So the water can just seep under pressure into the zero pressure, atmospheric pressure of the oil gallery, and it goes into the oil that way. So you'll see people, they'll sort of open their oil cap and say, "Oh, looks like milkshake," or they'll pull their dipstick out in the older engines. Again, you have to be careful, especially in the case of an oil cap, because the way engines are and the way sometimes the oil filler caps are designed, there's a big space there for condensation to form. And over time, you will get condensation. Condensation will condense and it will mix with the oil vapors and it will go milky, and it's not necessarily a sign of head gasket. So if you go to a garage for an oil change and some mechanic comes out smoking a cigarette or chewing on some grass and he's got an oily rag over his shoulder and he opens your cap and sort of gives it that one, he's probably trying one. He's trying to pull a fast one there.
Yeah.
But
so beware.
Just be careful. The best way to tell whether you have issues with your oil and coolant is to understand what they're like when there isn't a problem. You don't necessarily need to know why. You don't necessarily need to know how. What you need to know is, okay, my car's just been serviced and the garage are telling me that this car is okay to go. Or they've told me there's stuff to do and I've done it, but now it's okay. Just ask them for 10 minutes of the time. Can you show me where to put the coolant, what it should look like, how it should go in, where do I fill it to, etc. Same with the oil. Same with every fluid under there.
Yeah.
And then if you know, well, that's how it should look, and then a week later you check and it isn't like that, there's a problem.
Right.
You don't need to know what the problem is. You don't need to know why or how or when or what. Just that that's not right. I'm going to go back. Because sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to check because they think that they need to understand more than they actually do. It's literally looking at something and comparing it to what it should be like. Yeah. If it's not the same, why take the risk? Yeah. And it might be that somebody says you just need to pour 100 mils of water in there and you're fine. Great. But it might be, you've got a big problem there and let's fix it before it becomes catastrophic to the engine. Because we're not, we started talking about smoke at the beginning. If you don't check your mirrors and see smoke coming out the exhaust, that's going to cause bigger problems. If it's black smoke and it is because it's burning oil, then you've got a massive problem. Take the example of an engine that's overfueling, or the example where it's not necessarily overfueling, but it's not getting enough air. So a lot of engines now are turbocharged. And if the turbo boost hoses that are under quite considerable pressure relative to atmosphere, if one of those splits, which they do, or pops out of its locked connector, the air that has been measured going into the engine doesn't actually make it. So the fuel is fueled expecting a certain quantity and volume of air, which it doesn't actually get. So you're effectively overfueling the engine and you'll get smoke out the exhaust differently. Now, more modern engines, the oxygen sensors in the exhaust and everything else will start to measure and cut back on this, and you'll potentially get an engine warning light, particularly on a German or European car. But not straight away and not always. There are other signs on that example of noise and everything else. But if you keep going like that, and especially on a car that's not as specifically or well monitored, shall we say, or sophisticated, you're going to cause massive problems. You're going to have excess carbon built up in the engine, which gets diluted down into the oil, makes the oil less effective as a lubricant. We get that deposited as like volcanic glass, like we've talked about before. And then all that has stemmed from not actually paying attention to what was it like and what is it like, and is there a variance, and if so, should I just make a phone call to the garage or just take it in? And for a 5-minute phone call sometimes it saves the problem of having to strip the engine down and clean it.
I think we're just too hands off. I think because you can't. There's so many things you can't do now to an engine. In some cases, just having a dipstick, they don't exist.
No,
we've gotten so hands off, we don't even think about these things.
Yeah, well, if you open the bonnet of a car now that's got an internal combustion engine, providing it's not a mid or rear engine, if you get into where the engine is, everything's covered with a plastic cover.
Yeah.
And those plastic covers are held on by little rubber bobbins on plastic pins, which always break. And people, and they're ridiculously tight. They're unnecessarily tight. You can't change a bulb. The bulbs are all stupid high voltage that are going to kill you or seriously injure you if you do something wrong. So every single basic understanding of a vehicle is irrelevant now, because most people can't actually see. They can't see where the alternator is. They can't see where the drive belt is. They can't see where the oil filler cap is. These things seem more daunting, but there's certainly nobody at our garage, and there's nobody I can think of that's worth talking about that would say, I've not got 10 minutes to explain to you how to look after your car or to understand that there's a problem. It makes complete sense. And if people did that, they'd probably find that they'd catch small problems before they become big problems.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting one when we talk about coolant is we've got the auxiliary tank where and it's got a max and a min level on it. And I was looking at my auxiliary tank, and it was in the right level, so it was fine. Actually, I topped it up a little bit. But I'm looking out the back at the overflow, and I'm thinking there must be times when engines get really warm, and that tank is to the brim, and it's spewing out into the engine bay. Right, and I'm looking at where the tap is. I'm going, it's right on the belts.
Excellent, yeah.
I mean, who designed it? Because I'm thinking that, if I've got Prestone coming out onto my, fan belt and alternator and all that stuff, all these belts, that's not good.
No, absolute nightmare. Worst case scenario. I like to think that somebody did think about that and thought, well, we'll do this so that the driver will be alerted to the belt noise.
Yeah.
But I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
It's a good idea, though.
But,
suddenly your car's going to be squealing.
Right. I mean, the other problem with that is, so on the system, so there's two, and I don't like that system, but there's two systems on, more common systems, shall we say, on engine cooling. Both of them are pressurized. The one you're talking about is where you have a pressurized cap on the top of the radiator.
Right.
And then there's an overflow past the pressure valve. So if the pressure valve opens, the water's able to go into the overflow catch tank. And then because the pressure differential, as it cools down, it sucks it back. Now, when you open that kind of system on the radiator cap, those caps are a few dollars each. They're not expensive.
Yeah.
Some of them hold up to 1.5, 2 bar. Some of them are really quite powerful on their spring and their valve. But it's a very cheap, mass-produced part that not only can it break very easily, but it can be fitted so wrong.
Yeah.
And if you leave that fitted wrong or it breaks, there's no pressure able to build up. So the water just constantly goes to its lowest pressure point, which is the expansion tank.
Yeah.
And you will drain an engine very, very quickly in that condition. Water boils at 100 degrees at atmospheric pressure at sea level.
Yeah.
But an engine needs a coolant not to boil, but it gets over 100 degrees. So that's the reason for pressure. It raises the boiling point, and then you add coolant additive, which raises it a little bit more. But at 103, 105 degrees C, under pressure, it's okay.
Yeah.
But if you release that pressure, it will boil. And when it boils, it will boil off, and you will lose a massive, massive quantity of coolant just on a 10-mile journey.
And that's where you see when people blow something that's, the steam that's coming out.
You can literally lose an engine and a transmission because of how transmissions are cooled these days, because of a small pressure valve in a cap. Now, the other system, which is the more, maybe a bit unfair to say, but the more modern system, which doesn't have a pressure cap on the radiator, there's just pressurized expansion tank. Pressurized, shouldn't really call it reservoir, actually, it's not an expansion tank, which is the highest point of the system where you fill the coolant, you have a level, and that's pressurized. There's a pressurized cap. Now, when that pressure valve fails, it's the same thing, but the water just escapes, doesn't go anywhere, and it will flicker, open and close. Now, sometimes they will fail. Customers will say, we have a coolant leak. The coolant, we're having to top it up every couple of weeks. The only way to pressurize the system is to open the cap and pressurize it from the bottle. Now, the cap's now been removed. We've got 2 bar of pressure on the system and nothing's leaking. It's been there for 3 hours and not leaked. The pressure's been perfectly well maintained. Put the cap back on, they come back because there's an issue with the cap. So in that instance, we always say, because of the inexpensive nature of the part, we haven't found a leak here, engine hot, engine cold, we're going to change the cap. There's, it's not like it's a bad thing to change anyway. And just as a caveat, we've just pressurized your system for an extended period of time, not found a leak. But if there's something that was starting to weaken, it may have been aggravated by what we've done, and you need to keep an eye on the level and anything dripping out underneath. Coolant's a bad one because it's hot, the engine's hot, the radiator's hot, there's fans blowing, it evaporates very quickly. Yeah. So it is a difficult one to sometimes trace. But if you've got the right concentration of additive, you'll see a residue.
That's another good reason to have some coolant, not just water.
Yeah. Well, water's a pain. And with oil coolers and stuff, you really need distilled water as well. Yeah.
Which they sell lots of at the petrol stations. Yeah. You can buy a big bucket of the stuff for nothing. But
catch your AC condensation.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why we're not doing that.
Yeah, we do it in the garage and fill the watering cans up every day. This time of year, like, we're probably catching Well, the old, we just recycled one of the old water bottles from the top loading water tower. That fills 3 times a day from 2 AC units.
It's a lot.
So, that's a lot of water for free, and also it's good, pure water.
Yeah. Interesting things that we start looking at, and it's made all the papers. Mercedes-Benz doing a recall. That is, and that's Mercedes-Benz. That you forget what they're recalling. It's Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
This is catastrophic.
The wording I liked was that I forget the exact wording, but one of the terms they used in the wider press release was that the service brake may become the service brake pedal may not work because the pedal may become detached from the system.
Yeah.
Because of corrosion on the servo. So basically what they're saying is that the vacuum operated brake assist, which all cars have had for decades now.
Yeah.
There's vacuum drawn by the motion of the engine. As the cylinders go down, they pull air and create a vacuum. And as that vacuum also then is stored and pulls on your foot, basically, as you press the brake, it pulls on the pedal. If anyone that's driven an old classic or a vintage car with no brake assist, it feels like the brakes are solid.
Yeah.
Well, they are. But the vacuum from the engine is pulling on the pedal at the same time as you pushing it, which helps you do it. Now, that's a steel tub, basically, nothing more than a biscuit tin that's welded around the edge and has a pipe on it to the engine to pull the vacuum. And there's a rod that goes through it that you're pushing with the pedal. There's a diaphragm, and then that rod that pulls the pedal on the other side of the diaphragm pushes the brake master cylinder, which then gives you the hydraulic advantage on the brake circuit. Somewhere along there's corrosion getting in, and one of those pins is breaking. Now, some of them are 2005.
No, they're old. Some of these vehicles are not new.
Yeah, so they've obviously had issues here. I would assume maybe an accident where a car said, the driver saying my brakes didn't work.
Yeah.
And they've investigated it and thought, oh yeah, this wouldn't work. And then they've maybe seen it twice. Or they've said, okay, well, let's see how many of these parts we've changed. And then they've checked and they've been like, we've changed 10,000 of these. This might be a problem.
Yeah.
So fair play, they've done it. Yeah. And manufacturers have to do recalls. And
they happen more than we know.
Yeah. Most of them are proactive service. So when the car's under... I've probably talked before, when a new model comes out in a dealer, certainly in VW UK, for the first 3 months, anything we found, excess grease on a door hinge, dirt patches being more concentrated on certain panels of the body, noise from wiper arms, wiper blades not clearing properly, having to readjust things too often, oil filter caps leaking, bonnets not opening properly, things feeling a bit stiff on opening, closing, buttons that click more than the same button on the other side of the console, whatever it may be. Every single thing we had to report. Crazy. And they would make a decision. And one of the ones we had on the Passat when it came out in 2005 was there's a diesel cooler underneath the car, which is just like a cooling fins on a couple of fuel lines. And it was about the size of maybe an A4 sheet of paper cut in half lengthways, and where they were screwed to the body, the vibration from the road, the actual nut would break. So not the nut, but where the nut was on the stud, the part of the cooler that was on the stud that the nut was holding would snap, and they'd fall on the floor, get broken, and diesel would go everywhere. Now, they weren't recalled.
Right.
We did a proactive service campaign on every single vehicle that fitted into this certain chassis number range that had that fitted, regardless of whether it was broken or not. We changed it.
Right.
Wiper motors, we used to put weatherproof caps on because one of the factories that made the cars forgot to put them on.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And the car came in for service. The service advisor would make us a job card, and automatically the VW management system would say recall. Sometimes we'd have cars with 4 or 5 pages on there for proactive service campaigns.
Yikes.
Now on the safety ones, you'd call the customer.
Yeah.
You'd say there's a recall on your vehicle. We need you to bring it in. There's a courtesy car available to you. We'll drop it off and bring the car for you. And if it can't be driven, in this case, I would guess they've had an accident that they found. Obviously, we're assuming, but I can't see how they'd have got to this point. And then they've realized, well, we've changed loads of these.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Interesting.
And sometimes you get things like a supplier. So Mercedes don't necessarily have a factory making brake servo units. They'll have outsourced that potentially to an engineering company that make them. So that engineering company might have come to them and said, look, guys, you've ordered 50,000 of these in the last 2 years. What's going on? You know, we can't keep up with the demand. Or they might have gone to them and said, there's going to be a production delay on this unit. And they say, well, why are we buying so many of those? Yeah. Because not everybody knows everything.
Exactly.
You know? And then they'll have looked into it potentially and
start
said,
putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
it's frightening, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least at least they're doing those recalls, and it gets worse when we start talking about technology in vehicles and computer programs and all sorts of crazy things that can kick in as well. So it's
the thing is with software. I was having a conversation with a customer whose Land Rover overheated, and take for example a digital display for a temperature sensor. Widely accepted as that's the way now. In fact, some vehicles don't even have a display. There's just a warning when there's a problem. And very, very easily, I could alter the software for the engine control not to monitor the engine temperature.
Really?
Very literally a 0 to a 1 or a 1 to a 0, whichever way the code is written, and it would not monitor the engine temperature. So if you didn't like your neighbor and you'd been on like some coding course, I mean, you know, we've seen the video of people hacking the Jeep Grand Cherokee on the road. Yeah. Obviously all parties involved were
part of the
cooperative, and they were doing it in a safe enough way, and they got the car to turn itself, to steer itself. Like, this is genuinely the next, I especially an all-electric vehicle, which has to be completely engaging, especially with the way autopilot's going. There's so much in the cars now to engage you. The screens are huge. The quality of the images, the cameras, all the monitoring systems, everything's amazing and nice and slick and quick and fast. But that all requires code, and it all requires software, and it all requires constant updates. And on a vehicle that can be updated automatically, as an example of a Tesla, it will tell you there's a problem. It will be connected to the internet and potentially update itself automatically. Yeah. If someone hacks into that, what do you do at that point? You know, whether they do it as a joke so that, you know, the fart noise that it has is just constant, or whether they do it as more sinister because they don't want you to get in your car, or they want it to drive to their house, or, you know, whatever. So there's a lot of things to consider, you know, with the way recalls might change. You know, we haven't had an airbag recall for a couple of weeks. There'll be one of those coming soon. You know, but, you know, Toyotas have stopped the cars accelerating themselves now, and you know, the more the dust settles on that, it did seem to be a little bit of driver error and fitting the carpet mats in wrong and stuff like that. But there are so many people outside of having got an understanding of the motor industry and how a car is made or operated that could affect your car now.
Yeah. Interesting one, Ford F-150 saw an article that's suggesting, inside EVs is where I pulled this from, suggesting that the Ford F-150 Lightning includes a free Tesla charging adapter. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. What's Ford getting at here? And they think, well, maybe they're trying to cozy up to Elon and gang, and who knows?
I mean, what are they doing there? So you can charge your Tesla from the Ford, or you can charge your Ford at a Tesla charger.
So you can charge your Tesla from the Ford. You know, the Lightning has that whole charging bay in the back. Yeah. So you could charge your Tesla from it. I mean, they're already selling them with that. Hey, if you live in a danger zone, you want to own one of these.
Yeah. They were people powering the houses off them in the US when they had the power cuts recently, right?
So, you know, who knows if this is for real? But it was an interesting someone saw one of these, so it's like, interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a big Ford of working with somebody at the minute on the new solid state batteries.
Yes, and that's a big one. You know, the gang who crack that.
Yeah,
that, and I liken it to the VHS beta thing where, everyone knows beta was better. Sony Betamax was the format, but VHS got licensed.
Yeah.
And it got made by one company. They licensed it to everyone, and that became adopted as a standard. So I think when the consortium figures out the solid state batteries, they're going to win.
Well, you've got their initial, their initial battery was twice the size of the one they've now already got to. It was 10 layers. Now it's 20, and it's half the size. And it was 2 amp hours, and now it's 20 amp hours. So we've done a massive step in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So there will obviously be a limit to that. We've not necessarily been back to the moon yet, so I don't know what's going on there. So there are always limits, but this is one of those things that will have to go forward, because batteries have to be small, they have to be light to be efficient, and they have to also be durable to fast charge.
And it would be nice if, while they're figuring this out, for the rest of us who still have liquid batteries in our internal combustion engine cars, that they'd figure that out too.
No chance.
I know.
No chance.
I know. I just don't get it. Everyone's figuring out how to get these electric cars to run. Let's do some little battery technology in the old school cars.
Yeah, no chance. 12-volt batteries and 12-volt systems, even an EV has a 12-volt battery on it.
Yeah, go figure.
It's 12-volt system, and everyone's sort of that 12-volt DC battery is something that we'll struggle to step away from. Yeah. There's going to be no way of stepping away from that for a long, long time.
Yeah. It's sad. It's very sad.
It's going to be a matter of having you'd have to have a generator, so an alternator, that would be powered by the actual battery to then replace the battery.
Someone's got to figure out this whole ecosystem.
It's an extra moving part. That's the thing.
We need this whole ecosystem worked on. Like, come on, people. I know I've got 11 months. I'm going to need a battery. So, I've already got it on the calendar. It's like, I'm...
Well, there's no, a guy called me this morning with his Dodge Charger, and he's not fitted a battery. He said, I think the battery's gone. Well, it was only 3.5 years ago that I fitted one. I was like, mate, you need to like write to the newspaper.
Yeah,
that's
guy needs
like
a
a record over here.
Yeah.
So
what kind of battery did he have in there?
I know, 3.5 years.
That's what I want to know. What kind of batteries he using?
One of the other problems with batteries now, when people's batteries fail, a lot of cars have LED screens that will still light up because they only use 5 volts, but you need 12 volts to start a starter motor.
Yeah. So
they're like, well, it can't be the battery because all the powers and the electrics are working. Well, they're 5 volt systems. Everything's 5 volt control unit. Yeah. So even to the point of everything lighting up, central locking will still work, but your car won't stop.
It's when my horn was going off.
Yeah, that's never good.
That was the worst.
Yeah. That's never good.
4:30 in the morning, battery's dead, but the horn's working.
Yeah. Everybody's changed his favorite
Everyone knows it. Someone yesterday, one of these Batteries R Us guys, I don't know what company it was. I didn't want to get too close, but he was on a motorcycle. And the reason it caught my attention is because he had these big saddlebags. So clearly he could go out, and he had a tester and he had a charger unit there. But so he's carrying 2 batteries with him, or one, but obviously he's getting sent out and he's picking up the battery somewhere. But I thought, man, that cannot be very efficient, because he's always got to run to a place to get one.
Yeah, I don't like that. The guys that do it in the vans obviously can keep stock of regular stock. But one of the other things with that some people don't necessarily appreciate is the back of these vans are not temperature controlled. Batteries don't like heat, and the back of those vans gets hot.
Yeah.
Especially the vans that are just a box fan in the back, and the exhaust is almost touching the bottom of the floor. That heat goes straight through the floor. I'm sure those floors are lined, but they're still getting extra heat from that, heat from the road, heat from the sun.
About that. We don't think about this.
And I don't know how long the stock is staying in the van.
Yeah, if it stays in there overnight.
But a few days of that is not going to do the batteries any good whatsoever. You're going to be...
Guy parks for the weekend in Sharjah in the sand pit as he's going to his place.
No good, that.
It's going to be 50 degrees in there plus.
Yeah.
Catboy did a thing the other day on Instagram with that. If no one's following Catboy on Instagram, follow. Good, Simon Smedley, good guy. And he did a coffee test. So he basically made a mochaccino, from the packet, put in some cream, left it in his car. In one of those... mugs that tells you the temperature.
Yeah.
And he left it in his car all day. Then came back and got it in the afternoon when he's done his shift. The cup is red, so it's boiling hot. Coffee's ready, he said.
Yeah.
You know, it would have got a 50 plus inside his vehicle for sure. It was parked in the sun.
Easily.
So it was, coffee. And I'm thinking, the milk's got a curdle, man. You don't want to be drinking that. It's got scoots.
That's all right.
my buddy is heading to Mexico City this summer. And what have I always complained about? Cars don't have washrooms in it. He's bought a portable. He's got 3 young boys.
Okay.
Mexico City. He said, the family lives 6 miles from the airport. That's a 1 hour drive.
Oh.
6 miles from the airport, 1 hour drive, and that's on the fast road.
I could walk that in an hour.
Yeah. And he said, so you got the kids. So he's literally bought a portable toilet system that can be used in the car because you never know.
Got to respect what it's doing.
You never know.
I mean, you don't want to be stuck needing the toilet when you aren't moving for an hour.
You know what's going to happen. Every now and then you see at the side of the road, someone's pulled over, and I just go, I've been there, done that.
Yeah. The worst of the ones that do it and just don't even try to hide.
I know. It's like, open up the 2 doors. We know what's going on.
There's a gaff tree there. Just go behind that. What are you doing?
No, just standing right there.
Madness.
You see the stream.
Yeah, madness.
Come on, people.
Get over it. Yeah.
Magna, gotta love Magna, and I'm pretty sure that's the Stornich family. I'm pretty sure we're talking the Magna. I didn't do the full research here, but Magna is I'm pretty sure it was a Canadian company. Anyway, they've come up with the ultimate. I want one, and I'm hoping that you and DJ can install this on the Wrangler. Breakthrough lighting that goes on the back bumper, LED lighting. You can share messages, and when it's not on, you don't even know it's there. It's embarrassing. I'm thinking it'd be awesome.
What messages?
Any message you program into it.
Oh no! This is going to end in tears. This is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, who polices this?
It's called Lightgate.
Maybe something gate.
Yeah, Magna. I'm pretty sure. I'm just looking this up. Yeah, Magna. That's it.
So you just stick this thing to the back bumper of the car, and then you see somebody behind you and think, I'm just going to make their day with a nice bit of profanity, or I'm going to tell them they're too close, back off.
It's through laser ablation is what they're saying enables the breakthrough, whereby LED lighting elements can be affixed to a thermoplastic surface. And
sounds like something Dr. Evil would say on Austin Powers.
No, there's a whole video talks about how, running through it. And they drill thousands of 1.5 micron diameter holes in the back bumper for this to work.
Who's drilling the what? How much
These
does
holes
this cost?
These holes are separated by not much more than 1.5 microns, but the light shining through then blends together to appear continuous.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy for people that have got the inclination to do that. I mean, I'd just be worried about you.
It's going to be ready in 2023.
What's the offence there if you decide to be profane?
I don't know. I'm thinking it'd be great on a police car. It'd just be great to have. It's going to get out of control. Backup buses. It's going to be crazy.
For example, let's say DJ had that on his car that was registered in his name, and I was sat in his car with him. I'd just be trying to get him in trouble with it.
Yeah, you can see how it's going to go 9 degrees of wrong. But it's coming. It's coming.
No, there's too many lights. There's too much light technology at the minute. And we're supposed to be conserving energy.
I'm not so sure what I think about these new LEDs. So you've got the LED headlights, and so now the LEDs are on all the time. So you got daytime driving lights, which is fine. But they're white when they're driving, and then they'll turn yellow when they're turning or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I like that.
People showing off.
I don't know if I like it.
People showing off.
It's weird. Yeah. I'm looking at it, and it brings us back to this whole discussion. You need to have signal lights. You need to have brake lights. You need to have all these things. But has anyone come up with the regulation, size, visibility? And I don't think there is.
So on a modern light unit now, when the lights are on, if the side light is on, or when the side light is on, and you signal on that same side, it will turn the side light off to put the signal on.
Yeah.
The signal's flashing and it's a different colour. Who needs the side light to go off? How bright are these side lights? He's stupid. There's no reason for it. It's a complete show off. It's just a gimmick to, look at our pretty lights.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like if you see any release of a new, like the release of the current new Range Rover, which by the way, I do like the look of it. It's
weird.
Really nice.
I don't know if I like that. I mean,
the full fat one, like the proper Range Rover.
Yeah, I don't know if I like it.
I don't mind.
I saw one on the back of a tow truck getting delivered somewhere, and I fortunately the tow truck was driving really slow, so we were going at the same speed, and it was just like I'm looking at it going,
Yeah, but when they launched it, they didn't tell you anything about the 4x4. They didn't tell you anything about the interior. It's just a picture of the lights when they unlock the car. Who cares? Who cares? And all these TikTok and Instagram videos of people pressing their unlock button and the lights doing these fancy things. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Showboating, like you said.
It's unnecessary, completely unnecessary. There's certain things that are good with lights. So the directional flashing of an indicator is not a problem for me, but it's still unnecessary. But when you have
it gets distracting though if they're not lined up. So there was a Chang'an yesterday, which I truly didn't know what kind of car it was. I mean, I saw it was a Chang'an, Chinese vehicle, but I wasn't sure if it was a Range Rover. I mean, it looks like a Range Rover, except the lighting's a bit different. But it looks.
They're the ones that do the X6. It's literally the same as the X6
and
BMW.
It had wonderful directional turning that was on the tailgate and then on the side, and it was lined up perfectly. And I went, oh, yeah, that really works.
I don't mind that.
But it was, again, it was just that thin strand. And all I keep thinking is if that LED strand goes, you're done for.
Yeah.
It's not like you just go and put a light bulb in and there you go.
Yeah, we used to get the problem on the BMW front halo lights. So they just have the ring, which looked really cool. And I had the same type lights. I put the same type lights on my Golf in the UK. They just look cool. But they're a fiber optic cable and they used to break. Yeah. And even that is like, that's a headlight. Got to change the headlight.
Got to change the headlight.
What's that all about? So I've always not liked LEDs. Like 2008, everything had an LED on it.
It was bad.
And then it's kind of not aged at all well. And I thought we'd gone away from it.
I did too.
Now we kind of come back to the LED. I think it's just a cheaper way to implement the technology of having them on and off and flash and this, that, and the other. But no,
I'm not an LED fan either.
Everyone pushes how cool their lights are.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like the way Porsche have gone back to the full back rear light, I like it because it's just how that's the thing that made their cars their cars. That was the thing that you knew how their cars looked, just like a Gorilla and a Jaguar. You had, you knew the car from the way they looked. But I don't understand the whole LED fetish that's creeping back in quietly.
Yeah, no, and I think it's going to be a problem. I just don't like it. And look, I love talking to underbody lighting. It's not like I'm getting any.
I think that'll be Andrew's next step on the Tahoe.
Oh, I'm for sure. He's he's going to have the fuzzy dice on the mirror.
Got the black wheels and the trims all blacked out now.
Yeah.
Like 100% tint on the windows.
Yeah. I saw Colin today. I saw the Armada. It was parked out when I came here. He's got fully those tinted windows on. I wasn't sure it was his, except that the wheels were all full of sand. So I thought, this actually could be Colin. But the windows were so tinted, I didn't dare walk up and rap on it because it might not be him. And I wasn't sure if it was running. I didn't want to get too close because, you're in a parking lot and that's going to look creepy. Turns out it was him.
Yeah. Just sat there looking at people that can't see him.
Yeah. I think he's making funny faces.
Probably. Yeah. Or watching things on his phone.
Who knows?
Sleeping. Who knows?
Oh man. Hey, you know what? I think we've hit the end of the podcast for yet another day. It's been a lot of fun.
I think next week we should talk about deflagration and an engine and detonation and what it does to you and why and how fuel burns.
Okay. Let's do that.
I think that's got some interesting things that people might not necessarily know.
Absolutely. Okay. There we go. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to talking about how the fuel burns and why we get smell of unburnt fuel or other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Glenn Power, PowerWorks Garage. I'm James Piecowye. This is the PowerWorks podcast. We're going to do it all again real soon. Hey, go check out one of the 100+ podcasts we've already done. There's lots there. Loads there. Always informative, always educational, absolutely entertaining. The PowerWorks Garage podcast. My name's James Piecowye. As I said, Glenn Power is here. We'll do it all again real soon. So long for now.
Thank you.